This is Platemark. My name is Ann Schaefer, and I am your host. Today, I have a really special treat for you. My guest today is Bob Schneider, who is one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time. It also turns out he's an amazing visual artist and loves printmaking, etching specifically, and has done a bunch of it with my friends down at Flatbed Press in Austin, Texas. So I just couldn't resist the chance to talk to him because I feel like there's so many parallels between visual art creativity and singer-songwriting creativity. So we in fact do talk a bunch about creativity and a lot of other things as well. I hope you enjoy the episode. It was really a joy to talk to him, and we do go on, but I think there's some good stuff in there. Let's see, housekeeping. Oh, I identify as a cishet white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images that will help you understand Bob and his aesthetic will be over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. And also, you could do me a favor and hit the support and donate button over there and help me keep the lights on. It's a labor of love, and your support would mean a lot to me. Oh, and also, you could support Bob. He has a Patreon in support of his creativity, and also one in support of one of his two podcasts. Well, he probably does it for both. But I'm going to point you at the podcast called I Am Okay, You're Okay. I'm Not Okay, You're Not Okay, which is a conversation with his friend, the musician Clint Wells. They are hilarious together, and I highly recommend it. So that's my plug for you today. All right, I think that's it. Let's get rolling. Bob, it is wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for coming on Platemark. I so appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so for listeners, this is completely out of left field for all of you, and I have to give you a little backstory, which is that Bob is a musician, a singer who I listen to and have listened to for a very long time, and I'm taking my husband to Austin, Texas, where Bob lives, to see him in a few weeks play on a Monday night, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, you know what? He is an artist also, so I just couldn't resist the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about art. I love it. And printmaking especially. It's something I've enjoyed for a long time.
Yeah, so poking around, first of all, found out that you did a little time at the University of Maryland. Did you spend some time in College Park?
No, I actually went to a satellite school at the University of Maryland in Munich, Germany. Because I grew up in Germany, and they have an American school in Munich. It's like a 2-year associate's degree school that's really just an excuse to just continue to party for the rest of your teenage years. I knew I was going to study art, so I took all the art classes, but really they had one art teacher there. He was mainly an art history teacher, and he was great at that. And I took art history both years that I was there, and then I took all the art classes they had, which was a still life drawing class, and then they had a life drawing class. So I took both of those. That was it. That was the extent of their art classes there.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe 1,800 students. It was really small. Yeah. But it was great. I had a great time. Mainly, we just partied. It had been ranked, when I was there, it had been ranked by the Playboy magazine as the unofficial number one party school in the world.
That's not true, is it?
They said they said we would rank it number one, but they didn't rank it number one because they're like, we don't rank professionals. That was their deal. Oh. The problem with the place was you could stay in the dorm for like, I think it was $200 a semester for the whole semester. You had to take like 12 credits or something to stay there. So people that just lived there and partied and didn't really go to school. I mean, I lived there and partied and didn't really go to school as well, but it was a lot of fun. I'll just put it that way. Nice. And Munich's one of the great cities in the world, so it was fun.
Munich is on my list. I have to confess, I've not been there. Although when I was a kid, we lived in Brussels for a couple of years. So you continued your undergrad career at UT Austin? No, El Paso.
No, UT El Paso. So when I was a kid, we lived in El Paso for a few years. My dad's an opera singer, and we moved there so he could study with this guy that was a professor at UTEP. And so my parents had some friends there and connections there. And so after the 2 years at the University of Maryland in Munich, I took a year off because I wasn't really studying. I was just mainly partying. I was out of control, kind of. So I stayed at home for a year to kind of get it together, but I didn't really get it together at all. In fact, I was getting it less together. And at the end of the year, my parents really wanted me out of the house. And I looked around and decided that the only place I wanted to go to school was Cal Arts, because I liked the program. They had film, which I was interested in, acting, which I love to do, and art, of course. And so I sent them my portfolio, which was not a good portfolio at all. It was very lame. But I kind of just had always considered myself this like amazing, this amazing artist, you know. So I figured, well, even though the portfolio is not great, they'll just see how talented I am as a technical artist, you know, or whatever. And then they'll, of course, they're gonna, you know, there's no way they're not gonna accept me. That's the way I felt about it. And of course, they didn't accept me. And so, since it's the only place I had applied to, it looked to me like I was going to have to spend another year at home, or at least another semester. But my mom, as a stopgap, had applied to UTEP just in case, because she's smart. My mom's way smarter than I am. And so I was accepted at UTEP, and I really didn't have any desire to go there, but I went there. And of course, you know, signed up for all the art classes I could. And one of my favorite classes that I took there was printmaking with this guy, Kurt Kemp, was my teacher. And he was just a really fantastic teacher. And I really fell in love with his work that he was doing. I was taking the other classes too. There were some other really good artists there, which is straight. I was asking Kurt, my professor, like, how come there's so many like really talented artists in this art department in El Paso? And he was like, well, there's not that many art department jobs. There's not that many professor jobs available. And El Paso, if you've never been there, sounds sort of like a romantic, you know, border town. It sounds cooler than it is. You get there and you realize, oh, city's not cool at all. There's nothing cool about El Paso. But if you're not from there, it sounds romantic. So we had a great art department. I loved printmaking, and my sculpture teacher was a guy named Ray Parrish, who was amazing, like a really incredible teacher as well. And between the two of those guys, they really expanded my mind in terms of like what art was. Up until then, I was very much a figurative sort of artist, you know, like Michelangelo. You know, if you could paint like Michelangelo or sculpt like a Michelangelo, that was the pinnacle of what you could do with art, and everything else was just a scam. Like, you know, modern art was a scam, abstract art scam. It's just all trickery or whatever. I just didn't understand it, you know. Like my favorite artists were like I love fantasy art, like Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo and people like that, and anything that wasn't that, I was just like Andy Warhol or something, you know, anything, you know, abstract expressionism. No. I was like, somebody's getting away with something here. This is ridiculous. You know, William de Kooning, somebody's pulling the wool over somebody's eyes. But at some point while I was at UTEP, maybe because I tried to make some of that art myself, you know, I was like, well, I'll show you I can do it. You know, I'll just make some abstract art and I'll show you how easy it is. When I actually tried to start doing some of that stuff, I realized, oh no, there's more to it than, you know, doing it, because you can copy that kind of art fairly easily. It's not difficult to paint that way, but to come up with your own unique style is so hard to do. I mean, to express yourself in a way that hasn't been thought of or done before is really difficult. So something about being there in that environment opened up my eyes to what art really was, at least modern art, I think, which is more of a way for the artist to kind of express who they are, like through their art. They're like, well, here's the art, but it's not really, this art isn't really about the art. It's not really about what the image is. It's really more about me and who I am as a person and my experience. And I'm using this art to convey to you who I am. So I was like, oh, that's different. It's not just about a big naked dude. It's not about just sculpting a big naked guy, which is cool. I mean, that big naked guy was a wonderful way for Michelangelo to express who he was. I guess he was
Right, apparently.
probably into big naked dudes. And
But that's the way you're supposed to start, right? Being able to render the thing, right?
I think being able to draw well is really important.
Okay, so let's go back to El Paso. No, let's go back farther than that. When you were young and your parents discovered that you were talented at this thing, they encouraged you, which is wonderful. My dad encouraged me, but at a certain point, he's like, you cannot major in this thing. That didn't happen to you.
No, well, obviously you've got my dad. He's an opera singer. He played music his whole life, so yeah, they were very encouraging, and they saw that I was talented at this thing, and it's something I wanted to do. What they really wanted me to do was get a degree. They wanted me to go to college, get an arts degree. That was what was really important to them, was that I go to college, and I did. I went to college, but I never got a degree. When I was at the university in Munich, I mean, I was in school. I was enrolled. I didn't go to class that much. I was failing a lot of classes, and then that's why I took the year off to try to, well, maybe if I take a year off, I'll get more serious or grow up or whatever. And then when I went to UTEP, same sort of thing. I mean, there were certain, if I loved the class, if I loved the teacher, like all the art classes, I was getting all A's in and loved and went to all those classes. But, you know, intro to English or intro to psychology or whatever.
Math.
I mean, I would go to I never took a math class in college. Because when I was in high school, I ended up going to this British high school, British military high school, and they have these advanced math classes you can take. Because I was really good at math, and so because I had taken these advanced math classes in high school, I never had to take any more math when I got to college to get a fine arts degree. Obviously, if I would have, you know, been trying to crack the, you know, I don't know. I was going to say something about physics, but I don't even know how to describe anything in physics. So, you know, for an arts degree, I didn't have to take any more math. But I mean, it's such a weird thing. I don't know why, but if I didn't enjoy the teacher, or if I didn't enjoy the class, I just wouldn't go, you know. And I've kind of always been that way. I'm like, I've always wondered about people who do things that they don't want to do. Like, you just have this opportunity, you have this life that you're given where you can really do anything. I don't understand why anybody would ever do what they don't want to do, you know? And then they're like, well, I know, but I've got a family. I've got to, I got to take care of responsibilities. I'm like, no, you don't have to do it. You can do anything you want. And so that's kind of the way I've always felt. I'm like, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do, which means I don't have a degree. I don't have a college degree. Yeah, because at some point, this guy, Terry, are you familiar with Terry Allen, the artist? Mm-hmm. He's also a singer, songwriter. So he was a good friend of Ray Parrish, the sculpture teacher. And so he brought him in to give a lecture at UTEP. I'd been there about a year and a half. I was almost done with the semester. He comes in and shows up for class, and he's clearly hungover because he'd been in Juarez the night before, which is where I was most of the time as well. I loved Juarez. So he comes in, he's wearing sunglasses, he's got like a leather jacket on, he's smoking a cigarette in class. And I don't know what his whole spiel was about, but the thing that I took away from it was, if you're going to make art, your degree's not going to do anything for you. If you're going to make art, just start making art. Because who cares? Nobody cares if Picasso had a degree or Michelangelo, or, you know, those are by the way, when we talk about artists, it's going to be Picasso and Michelangelo. My apologies to anybody who thinks Picasso's or Michelangelo's a creep, because I can't think of any others. I guess there's Monet or Duchamp. Is that an artist? I don't know. I mean, there's a few other ones I could think of, but I'm using that as the basic example of, you know, like, nobody cares. When you go into a museum, you're not like, did this guy get a degree? Oh, he didn't get a degree? Let's move on. You know, nobody cares. So So that really struck home with me. I was just about done with the semester. I wasn't doing well at UTEP either. And I was playing in a band with some friends of mine. I was just playing keyboard in this band. And they had talked about moving to Austin to play music. And I told them I couldn't because I've got to finish school. But if I would have actually finished school to get a degree, I would have had to stay in school for, like, I'd have been like the John Belushi character in Animal House. I'd have been there, for 12 more years maybe to get a degree. I just didn't have any credits at that point because I'd failed out of so many classes. So while I was home for, it was over Christmas, I decided that I would drop out of school and move to Austin and pursue music because I was really enjoying playing music. I was having a good time doing that. And it was much more exciting than art, even though art was something I had planned on doing since I was a small child. I just always assumed I would just make art. But once I started performing in front of people, it was way more exciting than, art's, you're alone. It's very dreary, sort of monastic, lifestyle. And then when you're done, like, hey, look at my picture. Oh, I don't care. I'm like, oh, great. Whereas with music, you can get up and play songs and people are like, oh, you're cool. We like you. We think you're interesting. Really? All right. I'm going to do this somewhere. Because I was really shy too. That was the other component about it. Like, I mean, the reason that I got into art in the first place and the reason I got pretty good at it was growing up, my life was pretty chaotic. My dad's an alcoholic. My mom likes to party a lot. They both were very young when they had me and my sister. So they're good people, but they just were young and we're just partying. That was their thing, was to have parties and get drunk and they enjoyed doing that. And so there was a lot of chaos all around me. And what I found when I was just a little kid was I could go into this world of art. I had my little piece of paper, my little tablet, and my little pen or my pencil or my crayons or whatever. And on this page, I was in complete control. Like, I controlled everything. I could make up stories. I could be the king or whatever. You know what I mean? It was just very comforting to be in this world because as soon as I lifted my head and looked around, who knows what was going on, all kinds of craziness. So I loved this sort of escape that I was offered through art. And I did it all the time because, again, I was really shy, a lot of anxiety, and it was the thing that comforted me. Like I've kind of done that my whole life. Like when I was a kid, I sucked my thumb until I was maybe 11.
Me too.
Because it was very comforting. Mm-hmm. And it was only my cousins came over who were both younger and they stayed with us for like a week. And I was like, well, I don't want to be like a little baby in front of my younger cousins. So that broke me of that habit. But the art provided the same sort of thing. And then, in my late teens, not even late teens, mid-teens, because I was living in Germany when I was about 15, I started drinking. Same sort of thing. Very comforting thing because it took away all that anxiety. So I drank a lot. And that was also the reason that I didn't really do well in school. So I was just partying all the time. So I've just always looked for ways to deal with the anxiety that I've had in my life. And art was great for that. It was a great escape.
But your art extends out to writing and poetry and songwriting. It feels like you have taken every swim lane that surrounds the idea of creativity, and you do it all.
I do. I really do. So the reason I got into it in the first place was obviously this idea of kind of comforting myself, also having a sense of being in control in a very chaotic, mysterious, unexplained universe that we find ourselves in. But then, after I got pretty good at it, I liked having the art when it was done. Like, I liked the idea that when I woke up that morning, there wasn't anything, and now I'm going to bed, and there's this piece of art in the world that I created. And there's something really addictive about making things and creating things that you feel I don't know. It taps into something. And so, yeah, so I really got into making things. Yeah, for me, it's been music, songs, art, poetry. And the other thing too about all of it, songs, poetry, art, to me, they all seem like little equations, like little puzzles that you can solve. Like a poem for me, when I write a poem, I try to write pretty short poems. But to me, it's like a little math equation that there's a solvable answer to it. And so I work on it. It's kind of the way somebody would work on a crossword, Again, it's dissociative. In other words, you're not having to deal with your feelings or sit there and, think about your existence on Earth, which is terrifying. So you have this opportunity to kind of work on this little puzzle. And so writing a song, writing a piece of poetry, making a drawing, working on a print, they're all kind of this little exercise in solving a little problem. It's like a sort of an emotional math equation or something. And I love it. It's fun. And when you get close, sometimes you write something, you're like, oh, this is amazing. This is something so unexpected. And it's very mysterious, the whole process of creating. There's something very wonderful about discovering stuff that comes out of your subconscious or whatever when you're making something that's very exciting. So I love all of that.
If I were to put my mind toward writing poetry or a song or something, I'm fascinated by this idea of the equation, because to me, poetry seems like or songs would be a place where you could get in touch with your inner emotional state, or however you want to think of it. And it's a place where you can express that or get it out, or, you know what I mean? Oh, it's fascinating.
No, it absolutely is. What you're saying is absolutely true, because you do. I'm not very good at expressing my emotion. I'm way better at it now but when I was younger, I had no way of expressing what I was feeling, because when I was growing up, my parents, we never talked about emotions ever. We never talked about feelings. In fact, if my feelings bled into me crying or me being annoying, I'd get a spanking. I learned early on that if I was annoying my dad in any way, which is, just being a kid running around, screaming, crying, doing what kids do, I'd get a spanking. So I learned really early on, I have to act like an adult. And feelings are dangerous because they could lead to a spanking or whatever. And so I didn't really develop emotionally as a person until I was in my 40s, and start going to group therapy and individual therapy and stuff like that to grow up emotionally. And before that, I would express what I was feeling with art or with music. And I was doing it, but I didn't really realize that I was doing that exactly. I would just write these songs or create this art. It's all made up. Most of the art that I do is very fantastical, and it's not really realistic in terms of it doesn't look necessarily like any, there's figures there, but it's not like a drawing of a person sitting in a chair or something. It's, a person, it's like half of a horse and half of a human.
Well,
and,
it's
that
classic surrealism, Bob.
Yeah, cup of coffee or whatever. So, and same with my songs. I would write these songs, and all the things that happen in the songs are all made up. They're all fabricated. I'm not writing autobiographically from my experience. But what I found out later was whatever emotional thing was going on with me, like if I was upset or I was excited because I was falling in love with someone, or I was sad because I was missing someone, or I experienced something amazing that I'd never experienced, like going to Florence and seeing all that art. Whatever that emotional thing that I was feeling, that would come through in the work, in the music, in the art. It was only later on that I realized, because I would always tell people, everything I write is not autobiographical, but it was all emotionally autobiographical. It was all about what I was feeling. And in fact, the thing I realized at a certain point was it's much easier for me to express sadness in a song if I can make up the events, because then you really can, you can finagle them in a way that really, something really sad happens in the song. And it sounds real because it is real. The sadness, the emotion is real. And then people think that the events in the song are real, but they're not. Those are fabricated. It's the only thing that's real is the emotional part. But it's easier to express that emotion if I'm able to express that any way that I feel necessary to express it, which also gives me complete freedom as an artist, which is wonderful. But here's the other, having said all that, and I don't know how boring this is, but the other thing that I've discovered is all of that stuff, all of the good creative stuff, for lack of a better word, because I'm not smart that way, all of it comes from my subconscious. So similar to AI, I don't know what's going on in my subconscious. I have this, every day that I'm going through my life, I'm sucking in all this information all the time. I'm one of those hyper vigilant, hyper aware people. I'm just taking in so much information. I can walk into a room and a second later, I know everything that's going on in the room. I know where everybody is, what everybody's doing, who everybody is. I've already decided who the dangerous people are, who the safe people are, where I can be in this room without being hurt. It's such a weird thing. And it all happens in a second or two of entering the room. Now, all of that happens without me even being that aware of it. It's just something I've always done. So I don't really take a lot of time and analyze it. But all of that information goes into my subconscious because you can't consciously think about all that stuff. It's too much information. So that's all in the subconscious. And then when I'm creating something, what I do is I just get very still and start playing music or start drawing. And then whatever comes to the surface out of that subconscious, I just let that be what it is. I don't try to manipulate it at all with my critical part of my brain or my conscious part of my brain. I just try to let that come through as unvarnished. I just try not to do anything to it. I just try to have it show up, and when it does, I mean, it's like magic. It's like it's like finding a Tyrannosaurus bones in the sand. They're there. It's like pulling up a giant, like fishing, and then all of a sudden you're reeling in the Loch Ness monster, and you're like, "What is this?" And you don't know how. And it's not something you can do. And now some people have this thing where they can write a song about a guy who, invented electricity. I don't know how to write it. I don't know how to do that. But I have written songs about guys who invent electricity, but only because I have no agenda. So with anything that I create, I really don't have an agenda. Some people have an agenda where I have to make something that I can sell, or I have to make something that people will like, depending on whatever the newest trend is. And I've never done anything like that not because I haven't tried. I've tried to do that because I do want to make money and I do want people to like me. And it's not because I'm above that or anything. I can't do it. Maybe if I was smarter, maybe people that are really smart can do that, but I'm not smart enough to do that. So I rely solely on my subconscious to create work. And again, I don't know how that subconscious works, just like I don't know how AI works. But lately I've been fascinated by pulling up all these images out of the AI, out of these AI bots. And it's just fascinating to me in the same way that my own subconscious is fascinating, I think they're very similar in that they're very mysterious. I don't know how they work, but they work, and they work really well. But they're not good. Just like my subconscious, if I say, "Hey, subconscious, do this. My subconscious is like, what? Okay, here's some garbage that doesn't work. Same with AI. If you tell an AI like, oh, George Washington eating a hamburger at an Arby's, it's going to, you know what I mean? It's not going to look good. It's going to be glitchy and weird.
Sure.
So, anyways, I'm running on and on.
No,
I don't know if any of this is
it's fascinating,
helpful or interesting in any way.
No, I love talking about creativity because I feel like everybody has their own process of tapping into it. And yours feels to me like a very genuine way to do authentic, all those little buzzwords you poo-poo. You are very aligned with the surrealism school from the early part of the 20th century. They were very interested in the subconscious and letting those images bubble up, basically. And they called it automatism, automatic drawing. And so artists would just draw, doodle, 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 doodle. And, finally, these kind of Jungian archetypes would rise to the surface. And that would be the thing they would pay attention to because it had repeated itself more than, 100 times or whatever. It's fascinating because you slide right, and your work, in fact, is very surreal. It's fascinating to me. You're like a 21st century surrealist.
I mean, that's exactly what I do for sure. Like, if you look at these big prints that I do, I mean, all the work tends to eventually become like some sort of a human figure. It tends to be like arms and legs and a head. Just because, for whatever reason, it just ends up being that, because it's easy, I guess, because I know what that looks like. It's like the original stick figure or something. But when I start, I'm drawing bugs and lines and doodles, and I don't know what it. And then as I'm drawing, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a head and that's a body, and all right, yeah, that's an arm. Oh, yeah, there's fingers there. But I know how to draw fingers. I love drawing fingers. I love drawing fingernails. I love drawing teeth. I get to draw teeth again. All right, wonderful. Let me put in a bunch of teeth here.
Not easy. Hands.
Oh, no. I don't know how to draw them so that they look like real hands. I just like the language of hands. When I see somebody who can really draw well, like where they know all the anatomy and how everything's supposed to align in space and stuff, I love that. I'm always fascinated by people who can do that. I never learned any of that, or I read comic books a lot as a kid, so I loved comic book art. That's people that can do that are kind of like heroes of mine. I'm fascinated by that ability to do that. No, I just draw a lot of fingers. I'll draw like 25 fingers. And again, that's what AI does. You say George Washington eating a hamburger, George Washington's going to have 6 fingers for sure.
Right.
They'll figure that out eventually of the normal number. But right now, 6 fingers.
Did you see this spring the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once?
I did see that, yeah.
The hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
That's what you're making me think of.
That's kind of what my hands look like,
right? But
with fingernails.
Right.
If you put fingernails on the end of those hot dog fingers, that's what my hands look like most of the time.
I'm fascinated by your brain because your story about walking into a room and sizing it up like that is, I have to guess, as a child you learned how to do that, consciously or not, as a protective mechanism because of the chaos in the house. So you could figure out where you exist in the space and who's feeling what. And it turned into something that is served you well then, but now it's, even more so. But like when you're on stage, if you heard me laughing across the room at Ram's Head on stage last spring, do you size up a room like that when you're playing?
Yes, absolutely. Like, yeah, everything that's going on, you're very aware of. If I look out in the audience and I can't see anybody, because the thing about the Ram's Head that's interesting is that the way it's lit, you can't really see the audience. You can see the people in the very front, and you can kind of see the people over on the side, the way it's set up. So the people on my right, way over there, I can kind of see them again, but just that front row. But then all of the people that are back, even one table at the Ram's Head, I can't really see. All those people are silhouetted in darkness, so I can't see their face. And if I can't see people's faces, I don't have I have a worst case scenario mind. Some people have this thing where like everything's going to work out great. And mine is, it's all going to ruin, everything's going to end badly. So in my mind, I'm like thinking, well, everybody's not having a good time back there. So I try not to think about those people, and then I just concentrate on the people in the front. But if I can see everybody's faces in the audience, what I'll do is I'll look around and I'll notice all the people that are having a good time. And then there are lots of people who are having a great time at a show, but they have a really bad resting bitch face. And I only know this because I have it, and I didn't realize I had it until I started going to this group therapy. And I'd be in a room with 7 other people, 2 counselors. And the people in there would be like, your face is telling me that you're angry, that you're not having a good time. Meanwhile, all I've been doing is listening. And when I'm listening, I kind of look like my face when it's just resting looks like I'm upset or angry or or I'm, annoyed. And I never knew that was the case. And so now, even now, whenever I talk to somebody after a show, because, people come up and they're like, hey, we had a great time and we loved what you did. I have to remind myself the whole time, just smile. Because if I don't at least smile, they'll come away from the interaction with like, yeah, I talked to him and he just seemed like he was annoyed with me the whole time. And that might be the only time I ever interact with someone. And I'm really grateful that they're coming up and telling me that they enjoyed what I did, because that's what I want. That's all I want, really, is that feeling of like, okay, well, these people like me, so I'm safe and I'll live another day. So it really is helpful to hear it. But I don't know that my face is doing this other thing, And so I just remind myself, okay, smile, smile. And so I've learned to do that, but that's a learned thing. The learning to smile when I'm talking to people is a learned thing because I went to group therapy. And it's funny because every once in a while I'll meet an artist and they'll have the same thing. And I tell them, I wish somebody would have told me, 20 years ago. I'll be like, hey, you have this resting bitch face. You need to make sure when you're talking to people that you remind yourself to smile, because I know you're not annoyed right now, but that's what your face looks like. So, I don't even know why. So what I've discovered is I'll look into the audience, and if somebody's not having a good time, I'm on high alert. And now all of a sudden I'm concentrating on that person the whole time, because everybody else is fine. Like, I'm safe with all these other people. They're laughing, they're having a good time, they're enjoying it. But this one guy over here is not enjoying it. So he may come and attack me and kill me. It's not that. That's all like at a feeling level. That's the feeling. Obviously, if I stop and intellectualize it, I'll go, well, of course, nobody's coming to kill me. And I'm not safe just because these people like me. But the feeling that I'm having is that. That describes the feeling. So now I'm concentrating on this person the whole show, trying to get them to laugh. They're never laughing. And then invariably, I'll talk to that person after the show, and they're like, oh, I really love the show. And I'm like, all right, that's great. That's why it's really always good for me to go up and talk to people after the show, because there'll be people like that. They're having a wonderful time, but their face doesn't show it. And circling back to walking into a room and kind of being very aware of everything, I don't think that's a learned behavior. That's something I was born with. I think there are certain people that are born with this ability, because if you go back 10,000 years or 100,000 years, as we're trying to survive as human beings, you needed somebody like that. You needed somebody to walk into the cave and then immediately upon walking into the cave, notice like, oh, I see a deer bone over there on the side of the cave. There's probably a predator that's using this cave. And the other people would just walk in and just see like, oh, this is a great cave. But you needed somebody to kind of be an alarm system for the rest of the people. So they would, they're sleeping at night, and then all of a sudden, there's like a everybody's sleeping through that except for me or any other artists who have this sort of hypervigilance. And then they're like, hey, I just heard somebody's coming to kill us, and then I can wake everybody up, and then we can get up and defend ourselves or run or whatever we have to do to survive. But you don't want everybody in the cave to have that ability, because then nobody's sleeping. You know what I mean? Nobody can work the next day. Nobody can hunt or gather. Nobody can take care of the babies and the kids and all that stuff. So you need a few people like that. But now, of course, nobody needs me. Nobody needs me to wake up in the middle of the night and warn everybody that there's a bear in the cave. So now what do I do with that hypervigilance? What do I do with all of that information that I'm taking in all the time? I have to find an outlet for it. I have to way to calm this anxiety that I feel, because I'm one of those people that have this thing where I'm looking for danger all the time to protect these people that are around me. And so I can use it in our world. I can use it to make art or whatever. You know, people use it in different ways, and I can drink. I can drink alcohol, and then that also works. That takes away that anxiety. But so you'll find people that are highly sensitive, hypervigilant. They find solace in creating things, and drugs and alcohol work great. But I've been sober for a long time. I got sober back in '95, so I've been sober since then. So I've had to find other things to deal with that anxiety and that hypersensitivity. And for me, it's writing songs. Like when I'm in the act of creating a song, writing a song, all of my worries, all my anxieties are pushed to the side because I'm working on this thing at the time. And it's not necessarily the same with art.
You're writing songs every day. You don't labor over a song for more than a week, I would guess.
Well, I make myself write a song once a week. I've been doing that for 10 or 12 years. And 10 years before that, I was writing a song every 2 or 3 days. Like I just made myself write a lot of songs. But it doesn't take me a week to write a song. It only takes me a few hours to write a song. So from beginning to end, maybe 5 or 6 hours.
Wow.
Is how long it takes to write. It doesn't take that long. But yeah, I do it once a week. I think it's important for me to exercise that creative muscle. I've seen people stop creating for periods of time, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And then when they go back to creating, that muscle has atrophied and sometimes doesn't work at all anymore. So, and obviously there's no muscle. You know what I mean? Obviously there's no muscle. It's a figurative way of looking at it. But for me, at least, what I've been able to do, and it all kind of comes out of the artist way, is I've been able to silence the critical part of my brain that's in there going, nah, that's not cool. Nobody's going to like that. Oh, what, you're going to do a reggae song now? Oh, you're doing more teeth? Oh, really? You're going to do another 25 fingered hand? Thinks anybody's going to like that? That voice is absolutely banished from my creative process because I've been doing this for so long, mainly because I did that artist way and then realized how that works. Have you ever done the artist way? It's a book that was written by
Julia Cameron. There we go.
And Eliza Foss. The way it works is it's a whole thing that you do over the course of a week or a month or a couple months or whatever. It's based around these thing called morning pages, where you just write for 3 pages nonstop every day. You just get up and you do it, and you don't use that writing for anything. So the writing would be like, I'm writing a thing with the skull in my banana brain with the clouds in the forest, and I'm walking with the hyper prints of the thumbprint with my teeth on the sidewalk with nothing left to watermelon brain. Whatever it is, whatever you write, you just write. And then eventually you'll start like Yeah, maybe later on today I'll be going to the store and buying because I need to get some. Yeah, eventually I'll probably try to get some, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. So you write these 3 pages, and what you're doing when you're writing these 3 pages is that part of your brain that's like, this doesn't make any sense. You're being crazy. All of that. You're just telling that to go fuck itself the whole time. You're just like, and eventually you do it. The first few times that I did it, I do it for like 6 months or a year, like every day, religiously. And when you've been doing that for weeks or months, and then you sit down to write a song, you don't hesitate. You're just like, you pick up a thing, you're like, I was walking down the road with my, you're just like writing you're just immediately writing, and you're like, oh, this is incredible. And it works for it works for everything. It works for art, it works for business, anything where you have to be creative. It's a wonderful way to silence, because you have the creative part of you, which is coming from your subconscious, which just wants to play, wants to have a good time, wants to entertain itself. And then you have you need to be better. All right, I don't know, whatever the thing is. You need to be perfect. This isn't perfect. If you're not perfect, nobody will love you. Whatever those voices are from your youth and growing up, from your parents or your peers or whoever, the teachers, whoever told you that dumb stuff, all of that gets wiped away doing these morning pages. It's really, I can't recommend it highly enough to everyone, anybody, any creative person. And you could do there's other stuff that you do. You're supposed to take yourself on a date and do all this other stuff, which is fine. You could do all that stuff too. I mean, that's great. I mean, I never did I never did the whole chorus, but I found the morning pages to be extremely helpful in terms of creating things.
This is giving me insight into some of your songs, which I'm sure floats into the art making also. This idea that no subject is off limits. Like, you have songs about Captain Kirk and Batman, which is my husband's favorite song of all time, by the way. And I mean, it's just like it feels like your music. And by the way, we were laughing through your entire show. It was fabulous. I mean, it hits pop culture, and it hits, deep sadness, and it's all across the board, and there's something for everybody in it, I think. And I can see how it would come out of this sort of giving yourself permission to say, fuck you to the finger wagging.
During the creative process, absolutely nothing is off limits during the creative process. Once you've created the thing, whatever it is, once you've written the song, once you get as much as you're going to get from your subconscious in terms of what the thing is, then you can go in and go, you know what? This part here is a little much. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of these five extra verses. We don't need these 5 extra verses. I'll pick the 3 best ones. During the editing part, you can bring that person in. You need to have some critical ability in terms of like what's good and what's bad. You can't. That's why, again, it all goes back to AI, which I'm really into and really fascinated with right now, because when you're dealing with AI, it's just spitting out image after image after image, and it doesn't really know. It knows a certain amount of what's good and what's bad, but it's not sophisticated the way we are in terms of aesthetics. And I'm very sophisticated when it comes to like art, just because it's been very important in my life, and I've studied it and continue to study it. So I know a lot about it, and I know a lot about what I like and what I don't like. And so I can look at these AI images, and I'll look through 1,000 of them, and maybe 10 of them I'll like. And then of those, and then I'll build 10 upon 10 upon 10. And so I'll look at, I've probably looked at hundreds of thousands of AI images at this point, and I have a stockpile of maybe 3,000 or 4,000 images on my phone and my computer that I like. And then of those couple thousand, I'll take ones that I like and I'll alter them to whatever degree I want to alter them. And I find that very fascinating. And I think that's the way creativity works, is like, I'm pulling all this stuff up out of my subconscious, and then once it's out in the open, once it's in the real world, then I can kind of go, okay, I like this, And even with printmaking, what I do, I mean, I'm just drawing on the plate, I'm creating the image, and then I'll etch all of that. And then I get it back, then I'll print it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't like this whole area over here. Let's get that burnisher out. And believe me, it's a lot different than trying to erase a pencil drawing. Burnishing that copper is no joke. But you got to do it. And again, that's where the critical part comes in. You're getting rid of the stuff that's not working for you in the end. So you're going to need that part at some point, but it's not a useful thing to have when you're in the creative process.
Yeah, no, I think the call and response of editing is helpful to have something to react against, but that initial sort of creative outflowing or whatever is, they're just such different parts of the process. It's fascinating, really. When did you start printmaking in the concerted way? And did you come to it, I know because you liked it in college, but like, I always love talking about the kind of camaraderie that happens in a print shop when you walk in to see Catherine at Flatbed and whoever the printers are at that point when you were there, because it's been a few years, you need to go back. I feel like print shops are the happiest places on earth because everybody's there to make sure that your creative stuff is flowing away and they want to make sure that you get to where you want to get. Like, it's just, I don't know, it seems so nurturing to me.
Yes. When I was introduced to it in college, it has everything to do with my professor, Kurt Kemp. Because when I was in college, I was absolutely dirt poor. I had no money for supplies at all. So I was taking a painting class. I had no money for paints. I couldn't really paint. I asked the professor, I was like, do you have any old canvases that I can paint over? And he gave me some old canvases, but you still need paint to paint over them. And I couldn't afford any paint. So that was a wash. But with Kurt, he was like, look, here's some old copper. Use the back of some, people leave their plates there. You can use the back of these plates and you can either burnish them out or not burnish them out. I like not burnishing them out. I liked all the weird stuff that's on the back of a plate that's been in the acid a few times. You get all this wonderful sort of imagery and stuff. So he just said, look, whatever you need, I'm going to give you. And, all the inks provided, and he had paper there that he let me use. And so it was a class that I could take where it wasn't costing me anything. And he was very nurturing and very supportive. And also it worked with what I was interested in doing, which was, I'm not sure what I'm going to end up with, Why can't I think of the name of it? It's such an easy thing to say. What's it called when you write that way or you're drawing that way? You said it earlier. There's real
automatically.
Just sort of. It's not state of the art. What's that called? Anyways, it doesn't matter. We know what we're talking about.
That's
but yeah,
right.
It worked with that kind of the way I created art. It worked really well, and the results.
Stream of consciousness.
I could get really stream of consciousness. That's
yes.
The way my brain works now. I can't come up with, I knew it was stream of consciousness. I can't, my brain just won't feed me the words.
I think it's a combo of COVID and our age, Bob.
Everybody says it's age, but I know it's COVID. Once I got COVID, the delivery system for words to my mouth from my brain stopped working. And it takes me seconds or minutes sometimes to come up with words and I only know this because I was doing podcasting through that and I didn't have the problem before. I'm just very aware of myself and how I work. And it's 100% COVID has something to do with it. There's some neurological thing that it does with the delivery of information. It's not broken. It's just faulty now.
Yeah.
And I do believe that it's getting better. It's better now than it was a year ago. And I'm hoping over time it'll completely clear up. I don't know. Anyways, getting back to the printmaking. So I did in college. It was great. I didn't do it for a few years. I was walking around downtown Austin, as I was wont to do back in the day. I didn't have a car, so I was walking around a lot. And you could walk around downtown back in the probably, I don't know if it was 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. I was walking around and these people were moving. They were like unloading some stuff into a building. And I was walking by and I was like, hey, do you guys need a hand? it was this lady and maybe this other guy, and it was just a few people, and they were like moving heavy stuff or whatever. And I'm like, hey, can I help you guys? And they're like, yeah, we'd love your help. And so I just helped them move for maybe an hour or two. And it was Kath Brinbury. I'm like, what is this place? And they're like, oh, it's a printmaking shop. I'm like, oh, I took printmaking in college. I loved it. And they're like, oh, you should come by and you should do some more printmaking. And I'm like, great. I'm telling you, I was broke. I was a broke person back then because I'm making music and I wasn't making any money. And I was kind of had a side job as an artist at a t-shirt company. I say side job only because I just didn't go into work very often because I was partying quite a bit. And I might have actually been fired from that job at that point. I'm not sure. But they were super nice. They were just so nice. Like you're talking about, like just very friendly. Kath was wonderful. For whatever reason, they kind of took me in and they were like, yeah, come in. And they did the same thing that Kurt did. They were like, look, we've got this copper. We've got a printmaker. We'll coat a piece of copper for you. Take it home and work on it and bring it back. And we'll do the printing. And we worked out a deal where they would provide the copper, the paper, do all the printing, and then they would get half the edition. After they saw kind of what I could do, they were like, we like what you do. We like your art. And I was like, I love that idea. It was such a wonderful thing because the thing I've always loved about printmaking is I can create a piece of art and then give it to someone, but I still have it too.
That's right.
Whereas if I just draw something in ink or pencil or paint something and then give it away, and I've never thought about art in terms of like selling art. I've never been interested in selling art. I still am not interested in selling art. I make art because I want to make something that I like, that I want to hang up in my house. And so if I make something and then give it to someone, I can't hang it up in my house anymore. So that's what I loved about printmaking. So it was great. So I started doing some work through them and that lasted for a few years. And then they eventually lost their printmaker. They got a new printmaker who's also a great printmaker, but I was having some problems with is it called asphaltum? Is that the stuff that you put on the plates?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There were some problems in terms of like, and it was probably me. I was probably leaving it out in the sun. It gets really hot in Texas.
Oh.
And so I was having some problems where I'd work on a plate for, 10 hours, 12 hours and bring it in. And sometimes the asphaltum had melted and I'd lost the image. And so when they went to etch it, it didn't etch the whole image. And so that happened over the course of like maybe 3 or 4 prints where I just was getting less and less of the results that I wanted.
Oh.
And so I eventually just stopped doing it just because I was like, I can't waste 20, 30 hours of drawing and then not have it print. Because of that, I kind of stopped doing prints. And it's been probably at least 10 years since I don't think I've done a print in 10 years. I say 10 years, but it could be 8 and it could be 12 because I don't know anymore. Because I'm 57 and I don't know when anything happened in my life. I know, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I have a couple benchmarks. My son's 18, my daughter's 8. I know when I got married. I know when my birthday is, and I know when I got sober in 95. Other than that, I don't know anything,
Yeah.
5 years ago, 10 years ago, who knows?
No, it's difficult.
But I do love printmaking. I love prints. I like how you have to do it all by hand. I like the whole process of dipping the copper in the acid and how dangerous that is. And, you could hurt yourself. Like, I love dangerous art. So that part's dangerous. And then you have to wipe all that stuff off. You have to coat it with the ink. You have to mix up the ink with the oil on the burner. That's also how you burn your hand. Then you have to wipe it off, and you got all this grimy rags everywhere. Everything smells like that ink. It's in the air. And then you've got this press. I'm thinking about like, oh man, people used to be tortured on, people used to be stretched with this. I don't know. It just brings up a lot of stuff. I love being in the print world. And you're right. Everybody there they're all making things. They're all making art. It's a great, you know what I mean? It is this environment where nobody's trying to hurt anybody. Nobody's, you know what I mean? They're just all in the process of creating. And it's such a lovely environment. You're right. It's a lovely environment where people are very supportive and yeah, it's lovely. It's a wonderful community for sure. The printmaking community, and everybody I've met that does it. I've never met like a curmudgeon. I've never met a curmudgeon-y printmaker. I don't know why. I'm sure they exist.
Probably.
But, that's the other thing about artists. I know for me, I've always had a hard time just being I just don't know how to be a human being. I don't know. I've learned it over the years. And like at this point in my life, I come across as not being very shy. I'll talk to anybody about anything. I feel pretty confident in who I am. I know my limitations. I know that I'm not trying to fool anybody by pretending to be smart anymore. So at this point, I've kind of learned the stuff, but when I was younger, I didn't know how to navigate the world, and so art was something that I learned where I was like, oh, I don't have to have any of these skills to do art. Like, I can do anything I want here, and it's such a liberating, wonderful feeling. Art provided a huge escape, for sure.
Yeah. You've said, I think more than once, at least twice, during the last hour and 18 minutes that you're not smart. And I beg to differ. Strongly beg to differ. Because, your show, when we saw it, I mean, I didn't stop laughing the entire time. Comedians are the smartest people in the room. And you are not only a comedian, you are also an incredibly talented songwriter, and you can sing to boot.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I really do. And believe me, I never tire of hearing how great I am and how smart I am. I can eat that up every day from anybody who wants to throw it my way. But my problem is that I encountered people who are extremely intelligent.
Well, sure.
And I compare myself to those people. Like, like I compare myself to Mark Strand, who's easily one of the smartest human beings I've ever read. And so I understand what it is to be really smart. And I'm definitely smarter than people that are really dumb, for sure. There's a lot of dumb people that I'm smarter than. I guess I'm hard on myself, and I don't mind. I'm aware of what my intelligence level is, and it's okay. It's fine. I wish I was maybe 20% less intelligent or 20% more intelligent. Like where I'm at, I can see how intelligent people actually can be, and where I'm at, and if I was just less intelligent, I wouldn't know any of it. Like I would just think I was smart. If I was 20% less intelligent, I would think I was 20% more intelligent.
But the really smart people probably don't have some of your remarkable talents in other areas. Like my husband is smart in a very sort of numbers bookish way. He loves a spreadsheet. I can alphabetize a list on a spreadsheet, and that's it. But we both, we have different strengths. So it's just, I hated math and I was never good at it. And I feel like I was really stupid at it, but I can do other things.
Yeah, I think it's the conscious versus subconscious. Like your husband, with his conscious mind, can do stuff that I or you are unable to do. I mean, that advanced math or software programming or any of that stuff, I'm just like, what is going on? It's so like complicated. I'm like, I can't, so I can't do any of that stuff. I've been able to somehow harness this incredible supercomputer inside me, the subconscious. But again, I'm not doing anything. I'm not creating any of that stuff. I'm just letting it bubble to the surface and then documenting it, which is not hard to do. If you look at my books, my journals, I mean, half these words I'm spelling wrong. Thank God for autocorrect,
But you're just releasing a graphic novel.
I am. So I didn't illustrate it. I found an artist on Instagram, Justin Barker, who turns out is a fan. And is an illustrator, and I told him about the concept of this rock opera that I'd written, and asked him if he would be interested in illustrating it, or if I could hire him to illustrate it. And we worked out a deal, and he worked on it for a couple of years and illustrated this graphic novel, the graphic novel version of this rock opera called FAYM, which stands for Fuck All You Motherfuckers. So,
which is on your t-shirt, by the way.
Yeah, I'm wearing the t-shirt right now.
The swag, yeah.
So he illustrated it. It turned out great. And there's a musical version of it. It's an opera. There's very little dialogue. It's mostly all told with music and songs. And it's kind of a fantastical story about a guy who's an addict and a junkie and a gambler. And he's trying to get away from these people that he owes money to, and they catch up with him and they murder him and his girlfriend, but he has taken something where he can't die, and so he goes back and murders all these guys. So it's just a kind of a fantastical story. There's a whole musical production of it. So he had to tell the whole story without the use of this music. So he had to just do it with art. That was a bit of a challenge, but he came up with some really great ideas graphically to make that interesting, and I really love the way the whole thing turned out. The idea is that eventually it'll be made into a movie, and then at some point there'll be a theatrical production of it.
Somebody on your team records all of your shows, which are frequent, at least once a week, if not more if you're touring. And there's unique artwork that accompanies each of those recordings, known as frunk, right, on your website. Do you do those, or is that you?
I do. I've always done the artwork for frunk. I used to do most of it. Most of it was all like digital collage stuff that I would find on the internet, and I would put it together that way. Sometimes I would use some of my print making for frunk. Some of the early frunks, you can see some of my prints that I've used for the art. For a long time, I was doing just straight collage. And then lately, the last maybe year and a half, all of the images are AI. And so you can almost watch the evolution of the AI on frunk from its early fuzzy, glitchy origins a year and a half ago to the almost flawless, crazy stuff that's coming out of it right now. One of the prompts I've been using lately is Holbein the Younger, the guy who painted Henry VIII, like very meticulously painted all these objects and then would have a human being in there. But really, he was just interested in painting the rug and painting every hair of the fur coat that the guy was wearing. And then, I guess I got to put a face in here. But he's just such a tight, meticulous painter. And when you use him as a prompt, oh my gosh, the stuff that AI creates with that is incredible. There's really no telling where all this is going to go. I mean, AI now is like 2 years old, not even 2. And if you think of it like, in terms of human, like when you're 2, what can you do when you're 2? You can't do anything compared to when you're 30. I mean, when I look at it from where it is now to where it was 2 years ago and where it's going to be in 2 years, because it's incremental, I really can't imagine what everything's going to look like. I do this thing every once in a while where I write down goals for myself. It's not even goals. I just write a script for my subconscious to follow over the course of the next 6 months, year, and 5 years, so that my subconscious part of my brain has a sort of a GPS as to where to head towards. And I was trying to fill in the 5 years from now part of it. And I was just like, I don't know what things are going to look like in 5 years.
Where did your son end up going to college?
He's at San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And loving it.
Yeah. Both of mine are out of school, and it's quite something to have adult children. I'm like, wait, you're actually a nice man. What happened?
I know, right? I was thinking the same thing. My son has turned out to be such a wonderful guy and so very different than I was when I was his age. And I'm going to take all the credit for it because I'm such a great parent. I'm just joking, of course. I'm sure it's everything to do with his mom. Well, I've tried to talk about him almost everything he's done. He's like the opposite of me. He's like playing lacrosse. He's joined a fraternity. He's getting an MBA. He's straight A student. He's taking care of himself. He's just a great, great kid.
Oh.
Yeah. And my daughter, same. I have an 8-year-old, so I'm having a chance to do the whole thing again with her, which is wonderful. Yeah.
That's quite a split. When I read that, I was like, oh, my rule was everybody in diapers at once. I'm not going back.
Yeah. But how many kids do you have?
I have 2 boys.
Okay.
Yeah, 26 and 24.
Oh, wow.
I know. They're very nice young men. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Kids answer a lot of questions, for sure.
Yes. I don't know. It's so hard. My mom died when I was a kid. And so to be there for them through their teenage years and everything, I was so conscious of, not that I did everything right, obviously, but, I just was like, I really want to be there for them. And I want to have a really good relationship with them when this is all said and done and they're adults and out of the house or whatever. And, somehow it managed to happen.
Yeah, you get to give your children the thing that you didn't have. And obviously you had tragedy with your mom. She wasn't there for you. So you were able to gift that to your children and also gift it to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. It works both ways, I think, when you do that. That whole thing where I couldn't talk about my feelings when I was a kid, I got to talk about my feelings and my son's feelings and my daughter's feelings. And every time I was able to do that, it felt so rewarding. And I'm sure you probably had the same experience when you were like, oh, this is something I never had that I'm giving my children, and it just makes you feel so good. That's the thing about having kids, when you're taking care of someone or doing something for someone, that's really the best you can ever feel really in life, is just caring for someone else.
Well, when you talk about all this AI experience that's coming down the pike, I'm like, but authentic human interaction is really the only reason we're here,
Yeah. It's so, what's weird about AI, the same thing happened when there was the big CG stuff that happened in the 90s. Anytime there's new technology, it makes me reevaluate kind of my experience that I'm having. Like at a certain point after watching The Matrix, I was like, oh yeah, this could all be a simulation, because it'd be much easier to create the illusion of everything existing versus actually having there be a whole universe, because then you have to find a room big enough to put the whole universe. Where are you going to put the universe? I guess you need another universe-sized space to put it in. Oof. How does that work? Huh? Yeah. Or create the illusion of the universe, and then that's easy. You can put that in your pocket.
Oh, God.
And then AI has come along now, and I'm like, oh, yeah, my subconscious is like AI. And also, wait a minute, is this just all a simulation? Is this all just AI? The answer, of course, is yes.
Oh my! Do you sleep?
I don't sleep at all. No, I haven't slept. I haven't slept in 30 years. No, I do sleep. Look, I can't help what I think about.
Of course.
That's the part. That's the part of my brain. It is very much a double-edged sword. I have a brain that constantly is creating stories. Constantly. Again, like that whole thing about walking into the room, and I've already created 30 stories. A story for every single person in the room, for the room. Everything has a story now attached to it that it was just created a second ago. So that's always going on. That's a lot to deal with. That's why I spend hours every day playing solitaire on my iPad, because when I'm playing solitaire, I'm not creating stories. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
I mean, it sounds like there's a little ADHD in there somewhere.
Maybe. For sure, I have some OCD stuff. Like once I start something, I just almost can't not do it. Like I've been playing Monday nights at Saxon Pub now for 24. I've played there every Monday, unless I was on tour, which is very rare. I've played there every Monday for 24 years. At one point, 7 or 8 years ago, again, who knows when, could have been 5 years ago. They were going to sell it. And I was excited. I was like, oh, finally I can stop playing this fucking place. And this guy bought it and he said, you know what? I bought it and now you guys can stay here as long as you want. And I'm like, what? So here I am, year 24, playing saxophone. I could quit anytime, but it's weird. That OCD part of me is like, well, I got to keep playing here. I got to play here every Monday. Now I will say this, it's my favorite show. I love playing there. I'm a creature of habit. If I find something I like at a restaurant, I never order anything differently. I wear the same clothes every day. It's black t-shirt and shorts if I'm not on stage, black t-shirt and black pants if I am on stage.
You may tell me that I need to take this out, but you are such an independent musician. Like, you have your own record label and your own book publishing arm. Where do you make the money that allows you to live? That's like your salary. Is that from touring? Is that from the Saxon Pub on Mondays and the tours? Or is it from the like, nobody's selling records anymore, right? How does that work?
There's a little bit of streaming revenue. It's not enough to support yourself. I make most of my money playing live shows in Texas. It all adds up. I play a lot of shows. I make a little bit of money selling art, not much. But I make enough. I just make enough to kind of get by. I have some money, some revenue I make on Patreon. I have a Patreon, which is great. You can make pretty good money playing live. Where I'm at this point, it's not a ton of money. But again, if you play a lot of shows, it adds up. But it is a weird business, whereas even if I doubled my audience, I wouldn't make twice as much money. I'd probably make 5 times as much money. If I quadrupled my audience, I'd make 20 times as much money. It's a very lucrative business playing live at a certain point. I'm not quite there, but
you and Clint on I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not okay, you're not okay, the podcast, which everyone needs to tune into. You guys were talking about the what, I forget the term, the door, and how the people who sell the tickets and everything are taking like 81% of the take. Like,
yeah, that's a place that I play twice a year.
Oh, okay.
And they are that place is absolutely ridiculous in terms of the amount of money they take from the artist. I mean, the music business is such a weird business to begin with, because the idea has always been with the music industry is like, oh, you're an artist, you write songs, or you're a band, you write songs. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you enough money to record an album. Then you're going to pay us that money back. We're going to keep the album even after you pay us back. We're only going to allow you to pay us back from a small portion of the record sales, about 8% of the record sales, towards the money that we gave you to record the record. And then even after you've paid us that money back, we're going to keep ownership of the record, and we're going to still continue to keep paying you 8% of what we're making on the record. It is such a horrible business model, but artists are not businessmen, and artists have low self-esteem. Like, I have really low self-esteem. So I'm like, oh, you want to give me 8%? That sounds great. You know, no part of me is like, oh, I should get more than that.
Wow.
I'm always shocked by people that have business brains, because they're just like, they have no problem making a huge sum of money off the backs of off the labor of other people, and being fine with it. They're like, yeah, well, I'm the brains behind the operation. Of course I should make 80% while these people are like sleeping in vans.
Right.
It's like, what?
Oh,
how is that? What are you doing? They did a survey of CEOs of the top 500 companies, in the world, and they found that like 80% of them were sociopaths, no empathy for others. I think that's what you have to be to achieve a certain level of success. I mean, if I ran Amazon, I'd be like, do I need $150 billion? Maybe I'll take $100 billion and give it back to the folks who are working at the company, but then I wouldn't have built Amazon. I'm not that type of person.
Right.
I don't have that brain.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I am a career museum curator person, nonprofit thinker. And I left the museum in 2017, and I finally got my poop in a group, and I started this podcast. But like, selling the pod to sponsors. I'm like, I just want to put out good content and people should love it because it's interesting. I have no head for this.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like it really is a different way to think. I've always just thought, like, if I'm doing something that I like, that I enjoy, then everything else will kind of take care of itself. That's the way I've always kind of proceeded in life. And I mean, I'm fine. Like right now I make enough money to keep the lights on and put my daughter through school, and I don't think too much about anything other than just trying to do the best job at what I do. And I don't think about money.
Yeah.
It's not a thing I think about.
Well, we need people like you, obviously. We need the creatives because the creatives will be the saviors of the human race eventually, I believe.
I don't know. I think AI, if I was going to say who's going to save humanity, I would say it's going to be AI.
Okay. Maybe it can come up with a solution to climate change.
Well, here's what I had an epiphany the other day, which is this. Right now, the chance of all of us dying, every human being that's on Earth, the chance of us dying right now without AI is 100%. We're all going to get old and we're all going to die. Every single person. Some people won't get old. Some people will die earlier than old. So right now we're at 100%. We're all going to die. Maybe AI will take that down to 99% or 98%.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
But I'm hopeful because I've seen what it can do with art, and I'm pretty amazed by that. And so if it can do that with medicine, or if it can do that with some human direction, but at a certain point, I think AI is going to be way smarter than we can even imagine. Like, I really do. I just don't know what the possibilities are there. I'm worst case scenario brain, which is, it's all going to end badly, but it's definitely going to all end badly. It's all going to end badly right now. But there's a possibility with this technology that things might change in some unprecedented and strange way. I do know that this, like the whole Terminator idea, like AI is going to build robot armies and destroy humanity. That's how human beings, that's how we've operated, which is like, we need resources to survive as human beings. We need land, we need food, and so if there's another group of people over here and they're using our resources, we have to go to war with them, kill them so that we can use these resources to feed our children. But computers don't need that. Computers don't need anything. They don't need to kill everybody to thrive. You know what I mean? So there's just different needs. So this idea that they're going to build robots and kill us all that's a human idea. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Whatever AI becomes, if it becomes sentient and is aware of itself, whatever that is something very alien to us as humans. Like, I don't think we're going to even understand or know what that is. Like, we don't understand ourselves. I don't understand what I am. I can see patterns in my behavior, but I don't know how my subconscious works. I don't know how any of it works. It's very mysterious to me.
Yeah, I agree. One last question for you. The podcast, I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not okay, you're not okay. Why is it called that?
Well, there's a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay.
I remember it very well. My parents were I'm okay people. Oh.
Yeah. And I don't know if I said it or Clint said it, but we were just on the bus one day and somehow we came up with I'm okay, you're okay. And then we immediately were like, well, I'm not okay, you're not okay. And we just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Okay. So once we realized we weren't going to be playing together, he moved to Nashville. We weren't going to see each other often. I wanted to make sure that we were going to still continue to talk to each other. I just enjoyed talking to him so much. I was like, we should do a podcast. I was like, we should definitely call it I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not okay, you're not okay. Because I think that really sums everything up, which is like, we are okay. Like, we're okay. I'm okay, you're okay. We're definitely not okay. I'm definitely probably not okay. And that's kind of sums up what we talk about. We just talk about whatever comes into our heads, but it's really about being two guys on the planet and what that experience is. And if people want to listen to that, and then that's what we do. We're two dumb guys, and we're on the planet. We don't know what the hell's going on, and we enjoy talking to each other. So that's what the podcast is. Right. And it's funny because a couple years ago, right during the South by Southwest, right before the pandemic, we were accepted to the South by Southwest podcast. They would have people do their podcast live in front of people, and we got accepted into it, which is great. We were excited to do it. And then right before I was about to come up, they're like, do you have any, basically what they said, do you have any guests on your podcast? I'm like, no, we never had a guest. That's not what the podcast is. We don't do guests. It's two guys talking to each other. They're like, well, you need to have a guest. I'm like what, who, like what, like, yes, it's just anybody that's not a white man.
Oh,
basically.
Jesus.
I'm like, they didn't say that. They didn't say that, but that's what they meant. They were just like, as long as it's not a white man, yeah, that's what we want. And I was like, all right, we'll have my mom. We'll have my mom, because my mom's funny. She's way funnier than me. She's way more crass than I am. Like, as crass as I am, you've heard me say all kinds of crass things on stage. As crass as I am very conservative compared to my mom. I'm like, she's perfect. She's in the music business. She's a woman. She's seen it all. And they're like, no, it's got to be a working musician. I'm like,
no.
What is wrong with you people? A friend of ours is a songwriter, this Patty Drew, this woman that plays in Wind in the Wave. And she passed there. She's like, okay, if you have her on, then you'll be fine. And the reason what they were saying is they wanted diversity. And I'm like, well, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Have us on there, and then have another group of people on there. And then that's the way you get diversity. You don't get diversity by like cramming everything, you know, what do you like? Go to a buffet and put everything into a blender and then serve that up and like say, oh, here's your diversity. No, that's just a bunch of bullshit. That's just everything put together. You want to, like, there's rolls, and then there's dessert, and then there's, you know what I mean? I was just like, what is going on? I don't understand that line of thinking, you know, it's very strange.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyways, it turns out it all got canceled because of COVID. And then we have not been invited back. I don't know if they're having podcasts on South by Southwest anymore, but that was it for us. They never invited us back, so I don't know if that's because we gave them such a hard time, or what.
Oh God.
Who knows?
Boy. You are a delight, and I have really loved talking to you, because I knew we weren't going to talk about printmaking the whole time because you have so many other interests, but I feel like we hit on some really interesting parts of creativity and stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on this show.
And I appreciate you being so patient, letting me just ramble and ramble. You really are a wonderful person. My heart goes out to you to have to listen to me just blabber on. So I thank you for allowing me to do that. I appreciate it.
I think you might even be surprised to listen back, because there were some moments I was like, oh, that's a good nugget. I got to write that one down.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Platemark with the fabulous and wonderful Bob Schneider. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm a big fan of his music, and I just love talking to him about all kinds of variations on creativity. Do me a favor, go over to platemarkpodcast.com, enjoy the images that I put up there in the show notes for this episode, and then hit the support and donate button. If you value the content of this podcast, it would really help me out to have your support. I thank you in advance. A thank you, as usual, needs to go out to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music, and also one to Dan Fury, my sound guy. Thank you, Dan. You're super helpful, and I don't think I could do this without you. And also, let's see. Obviously, thanks to Bob for coming on the show. He had no idea who I was and could easily have said, I don't know who you are and see you later. But he came on and we had a really thoughtful conversation. So I so appreciate his willingness to do it. All right. I think that's it. We'll see you next time.